So today we will be talking regarding the cranial cavity part 1. Actually this cranial cavity is covered in the two lecture, cranial cavity part 1 and cranial cavity part 2. We will be talking regarding over the following heading: introduction, contents of the cranial cavity, general consideration. In the general consideration we will talk regarding the important bony landmark and about the meninges. Meninges, not all the meninges, not in the detail, but yes, of course, dura mater in detail. We will understand dura mater's concept in detail. Dural folds, dural venous sinuses also, and blood supply of the dura mater, then nerve innervation of dura mater, and clinical anatomy. See, this is a lateral view. So already we have seen during the scalp, this is the cranial vault, which is almost very much smooth, and this is convex. This cranial vault make the roof of the cranial cavity. So when we remove this cranial vault and take out the brain, we see this superior view of cranial cavity. This is a superior view of the cranial cavity. This form, this cranial cavity which we see, the superior view, this form the floor of the cranial cavity, and the floor of this cranial cavity is uneven. You can see depression, lots of the depressions here, lot of the depression you can see here also, see lot of depressions, and the elevations, you can see the elevations also. This is the elevation, this is the elevation. So this surface is not means smooth, this is uneven, and this uneven surface gives anterior, means divided in a three different fossa: anterior cranial fossa, then middle cranial fossa, this middle cranial fossa, and posterior cranial fossa. Then we see another about the contents. Yes, the contents, and in the content we see this brain, a very much important, meninges and CSF, venous sinuses, pituitary gland, all cranial nerve, and 4 petrosal nerve. Part of arteries, the following artery: internal carotid artery, vertebral artery, middle meningeal artery. Remember here, just see, I have used the word part. Okay, so not as a full, only the part of these following arteries are present in the cranial cavity, and trigeminal ganglion. Meninges that are covering the brain, or you can say lining the brains, are pia mater, arachnoid mater, dura mater. Here we can see the arrangement of these meninges in relation to the brain from inside to outside. So here we can see this is the brain, and we can clearly make out the difference between the white matter. See, this is the white matter, and here is the dark one is the gray matter. So this is the brain. From moving inside to outside, the first layer is the pia mater. Now this pia mater is very much tightly adherent with the brain, with no any space here, no any subpial space. Then we see here is a space which is known as subarachnoid space. This is filled of CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So we can say that the brain float over the CSF. Then next layer is an arachnoid one. Here is an arachnoid matter, and then we see a layer which is dura mater. So this dura mater is an outermost part, and it is, we can see the layer of the dura mater. It is double layered. This is double layer. You can see this is an outer layer. Okay, this is an outer layer, and this one is the inner layer. So this is double layered, and here we can see the skull bone, and we can see the emissary veins, how the emissary veins, and this emissary vein is draining in the sinus, and this is the dural venous sinus. Here is the dural venous sinus, and we can see the skull bone. So this is the skull bone, and this is the inner table of the skull bone. This is the inner table of the skull bone, and this is the outer table of the skull bone. Then over to this outer table of the skull bone, from here to here, we can see the arrangement of scalp, SCALP. So you are already gone with this lecture of the scalp. So here you can see the arrangement of the scalp from inside to outside. We can see scalp arrangement from deeper to superficial. We can see here this is pericranium. We can see the pericranium or outer periosteum. Then we can see here the next layer, just here is a loose aponeurotic tissue. Then we can see this one is little bit denser one. This denser one is aponeurosis, Galea aponeurotica or epicranial aponeurosis. Then over this epicranial aponeurosis we can see the blood vessel, large blood vessel over it. Then moving further ahead, more superficially, then the layer is connective tissue. We say about dense subcutaneous tissues here. Then skin. So outermost is the skin. This is the arrangement in the scalp that we have seen during our lecture. So now about the this meninges, the arrangement, just remember the mnemonic pad, P-A-D, pad. Pia, arachnoid, dura. This dura mater is a non-vascular membrane and terminate at the level of S2, second cervical vertebra. So this dura mater, here we see it's a double layer. This one is an outer layer and this one is the inner layer. Outer layer is known as endosteal layer, whereas the inner layer is known as meningeal layer. Now these two layers are they are having a space in between these two, and this outer part, this outer layer which is tightly bounded or adherent with the inner aspect of this cranial bone here, without any space in between. And then as moving outside, this is the skull bone, and this skull bone, we can see this is it has a two table. This is the first table, and this one is the second table. Okay, now further moving ahead, we see here the layers of the scalp from deeper to superficial. We see the layers of the scalp which are arranged in this pattern: pericranium, then loose aponeurotic tissue, then we see aponeurosis, galea aponeurotica, then we see connective tissue, which is a superficial fascia, then skin. This outer layer, which serve as an internal periosteum or an endosteum or endocranium of the skull, whereas this inner layer, this is known as meningeal layer, which surround the brain. The meningeal layer is continuous with the spinal dura mater. These two layers are fused to each other at all places except at where the cranial venous sinuses are present. This outer layer communicate outside of the skull, here from outside of the skull, and continuous with the periosteum lining, of the skull. It is tightly bounded with the inner aspect of the cranial bone without any space, and this tightly binding is much higher marked at the point of the suture, any suture, and at the base of the this cranium, and at the foramen magnum. This outer endosteal layer communication outside of the skull can be understood in another image. Here we can see the suture here and outer endosteal layer of the dura mater, and here at the suture, this endosteal layer of dura mater, it moves out of this cranial cavity and over the skull bone. It continues with that of the periosteum, and at the point of the foramen, assume this as a foramen. So this outer endosteal layer, it moves out of this foramen and continues outside of the skull with that of the periosteum. And here at this foramen, say any nerve is moving out, of this foramen, say this nerve is moving out of this foramen, and this layer of this nerve, this is a epineurium. This is an epineurium. So this endosteal layer, when moves out of this foramen, it moves over this, it attaches with this epineurium, like this. It attaches with this epineurium, like this. It attaches with this epineurium. Whereas in the orbit, see this, in the orbit, this optic nerve, so this is an optic nerve, you can see optic nerve, and this is a dura mater. So this matter is over this optic nerve. Later on we see this is a sclera. This dura mater adhere with the sclera here. So these are the 3 points where and how this dura mater communicate outside of the cranium. this inner meningeal layer, we can see this inner meningeal layer. Okay, so this inner meningeal layer of the dura mater is, here we can see this is getting folded, and this getting folded and forming the dural fold, and this dural fold divide the cranial cavity into the compartment. You can see how the dural fold is formed. We can see this outer layer of dura mater and this inner layer of dura mater, how this inner layer is getting enfolded and forming the dural fold, and in between this outer layer and between this inner layer, dural venous sinuses form, where in this dural venous sinuses this emissary vein is draining the blood from extracranial to intracranial. And here we can see this is the subarachnoid villi and the granulation, which is formed by the protrusion of this arachnoid matter in venous sinuses, as well as this arachnoid villi get protrude even in the outer layer of dura mater. Function of these villi is reduce pressure in the CNS and absorption of CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. This extradural space is the space between the skull bone and the outer layer of the dura mater, with the outer layer of the dura mater. And you can see like here, like this here. But I said earlier that the outer layer, which is the endosteal layer, it is tightly, or it is fused with the skull bone, so there is hardly any space. But due to some pathology, some space is created between the skull bone and the outermost layer of the dura mater. Outer layer of the dura mater, this space is known as extradural space. Next space is the subdural space. So subdural space is the space between the inner layer of the dura mater, this is a meningeal layer, and the arachnoid layer. So this space is the subdural space. Next space is the subarachnoid space. This subarachnoid space. So the subarachnoid space is the space between the arachnoid layer and the pia mater. Here you can see this is the pia mater. This is the pia mater, and this is the arachnoid matter. So this space is the subarachnoid space, which is filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, and there is no any subpial space. There is no any subpial space because the pia mater is tightly adherent without any space with the brain. After removal of the brain, this is what we see is the floor of the cranial cavity. This is the floor of the cranial cavity, and this floor of the cranial cavity divided into anterior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, and posterior cranial fossa. So this anterior cranial fossa, which is in blue color, this anterior cranial fossa anteriorly by the frontal bone. This is the anteriorly by the frontal bone, as well as on the side also by the frontal bone. Okay, this frontal bone, this is the crest, this is the frontal crest, this is the frontal crest, and posteriorly here we see this is the posteriorly by the lesser wing of sphenoid. This is the lesser wing of sphenoid. Okay, and this is the now this I'm talking, this one is the anterior clinoid process. Okay, as well as the anterior margin here, anterior margin of sulcus chiasmaticus. Okay, so similarly this is of the left side and similarly of the right side, anterior clinoid process, then lesser wing of sphenoid. This is the posterior margin of the anterior cranial fossa. Middle cranial fossa, here this in the orange color is the middle cranial fossa. It has the boundary, so the boundary anteriorly it is limited by the posterior margin of the anterior cranial fossa, and laterally here the laterally is by the greater wing of sphenoid. So this is the lesser wing of sphenoid and this greater wing of sphenoid. Okay, as well as antero-inferior angle of the parietal bone, this parietal bone, and this squamous part of the temporal bone, squamous part of the temporal bone. Whereas the posterior margin of middle cranial fossa is limited by the superior, this is the superior border of petrous part of temporal bone, petrous part of the temporal bone. Remember the word, because these words will again you will encounter when we will talk about the dural fold, so understand it carefully. So as well as here this one is the dorsum sillae, this is the dorsum sillae, this is of the one side and another again similarly on the other side. Superior border of the petrous part of the temporal bone and the dorsum sillae of the sphenoid. This posterior cranial fossa, has a margin, anterior margin is limited by the posterior margin of medial cranial fossa. Okay, and on each side here, on each side, mastoid part of the temporal bone, mastoid part of the temporal bone, mastoid angle of the parietal bone, whereas squamous part, this squamous part of occipital bone, squamous part of the occipital bone, this squamous part of the occipital bone. And here we see this foramen magnum. In this image we can clearly see the different bones which are clearly demarcated with the different colors. and you can clearly see frontal bone, ethmoidal bone, sphenoidal bone, sphenoid. You can see this sphenoid. You can clearly see the temporal bone, and you know already, you know this is the petrous part of the temporal bone. Now parietal bone and occipital bone. Here you can see this is the crista galli. This is the crista galli, and this is the cribriform plate. Because cribriform means it is a porous in nature. You can see this is porous. So this is cribriform plate. Okay. This image clearly demarcates all the bones which are forming the floor of the cranial cavity with the bright colors. You can clearly see the foramens which are present. Okay, so this all is covered by the outer layer of the dura mater. Okay, and the dura mater protrude out of the skull from these foramen. The outer layer of the dura mater, which is the endosteal layer, which is protrude out of this foramen and attaches with the sheath of the nerve, which is coming out of this foramen. Image of this sphenoidal bone. This sphenoidal bone is enlarged in the next slide, in this slide, because it has a few important bony landmarks, and these important bony landmarks where the attachment of the dural fold, pars cerebri, tentorium, cerebelli, diaphragm cillae. These dural folds have attachment in these important bony landmarks. So understand these bony landmarks, because if you able at that time you able to understand in a correct manner where it is attaching. So just see this important bony landmark. Anterior clinoid process, you can see this anterior clinoid process. Okay, this is the chiasmatic sulcus. Okay, and this one is the dorsum cillae. This is the dorsum cillae. This one is the dorsum cillae. This depression, here you can see that this depression, this is the hypophyseal fossa. This is a hypophyseal fossa where the pituitary gland rest. This hypophyseal fossa. Then posteriorly you can see this is the dorsum cillae. This is the dorsum cillae. You can see this is the dorsum cillae, and this one is the posterior clinoid process, both sides, like similarly anterior clinoid process both side, this side as well as this side. So now to see different part of the brain, because in these part this dural fold insert. Okay, so first let's see where is this is the longitudinal fissure. Okay, this is the longitudinal fissure which is dividing the cerebral hemisphere into two parts, left and right. So left cerebral hemisphere and right cerebral hemisphere by the longitudinal fissure. This is the frontal lobe. Okay, here is the temporal lobe. This is the cerebellum. So it sometimes it maybe confuse a person get confused in the cerebellum and cerebrum. So cerebrum, RUM, is on the top. Okay, where is the bell is below. Bell is below, rum at the top. So see here the medulla oblongata, and in this image you can see occipital lobe, and here medulla oblongata. So the dural fold at places the meningeal layer is folded on itself to form the dural fold. So, and after the folding, these foldings are known as falx cerebri, tentorium cerebelli, falx cerebelli and diaphragm cerebrae. This is a coronal section of head and neck. This is a cadaveric view, and here you can see very well how these dural folds are dividing the cranial cavity in the compartment. See, here we see a superior sagittal sinus. Okay, this superior sagittal sinus, and here we see falx cerebri. This is the falx cerebri, which is present in the longitudinal fold between the two cerebral hemisphere. Okay, now this falx cerebri, then here we see straight sinus, then we see another, this is a tent like, you can see this is a tent like structure. This is known as tentorium cerebelli. This is tentorium cerebelli, and this tentorium cerebelli is tent like. Okay, it's like a tent, that's why the term tentorium is used. And this is, here we see another falx. This is falx cerebelli here. So between this, dividing this cerebellum into two like this. Okay, this is falx cerebelli. So in this image we now able to understand how this dural folds dividing the cranial cavity in the compartment. And one important function of this dural fold, these falx, are they hold the parts of the brain together. They are holding the parts of the brain together. Okay, so if any shock or any jerk in any accident, what any force is exerted either from the right side or left side or somewhere else, so these parts they use to hold the different part of the brain together. Okay, we will understand these sinuses, all these sinuses, either superior sagittal sinus and here this straight sinus, all this sinus in a separate lecture. This transverse sinus here, the transverse sinus in a separate lecture. In this image, brain is removed. The brain is removed, but the dural folds are intact. You can see the dural folds are intact, and these dural folds are dividing the cranial cavity in the different compartment. So this is the tentorium cerebelli. This is the tentorium cerebelli, and this tentorium cerebelli is dividing the compartment and in two parts. First, the part which is superior to this tentorium cerebelli is known as supratentorial. This is the supratentorial compartment, and the compartment which is below here is known as infratentorial compartment. This infratentorial compartment in the posterior cranial fossa contain hindbrain and the lower part of midbrain. Here we can see all these four dural folds together, and this one is the falx cerebri, you can see the falx cerebri. You can see the tentorium here, the tentorium cerebelli, and you can see the falx cerebelli, and here you can see the diaphragm cilia, the diaphragm cilia. These dural fold, these dural folds occupies the dural venous sinuses. So we can see here the dural sinus, superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus, straight sinus, transverse sinus, and here is the confluence of the sinus, sigmoid sinus, occipital sinus. So these are the dural venous sinuses. So all these dural venous sinuses occupies the space between this outermost layer of the dura mater, which is known as endosteal layer, and the meningeal layer. So it is occupies between this endosteal and meningeal layer, except two. One is inferior. This is the inferior. You can see here this inferior sagittal sinus and straight sinus. This inferior sagittal sinus and straight sinus are enclosed in the meningeal layer. It is enclosed in the meningeal layer, whereas the rest are enclosed between the this outer endosteal layer, this endosteal layer, and inner meningeal layer, this inner meningeal layer. So this dural venous sinuses have few important following points that you have to remember. First, they are lined by the endothelium. You can see this the lining of these dural venous sinuses are of endothelium, and they do not have muscular coat and wall. They collect the blood from brain, meninges, diploics, that's from the skull, bone, and from internal ear and orbit. They absorb the CSF and they receive blood from valvulus emissary vein, the emissary vein which is connecting extracranial with intracranial. So they collect the blood, venous blood, from emissary vein, and this emissary vein, see this emissary vein, they are collected by this here, make it with, so this is the emissary vein, so we have to draw in the blue color. This emissary vein which is draining the blood in this, it is also valvulus, and this is also valvulus because just to equalize the extracranial pressure and intracranial pressure. These sinuses are paired and unpaired. So those dural venous sinuses are paired, they are paired as present both on right side as well as on the left side. So they are bilateral. So these dural venous sinuses are bilateral, they are paired, and like transverse sinus, this transverse sinus, sigmoid sinus, cavernous sinus, you will see here the cavernous sinus. Superior petrosal sinus, here you will see on the petrous part of temporal bone. And inferior petrosal sinus, just inferior to this, sphenoparietal sinus, petrosquamous, and middle meningeal. So these are the paired sinuses. And unpaired sinuses are those which are present almost in the median plane. One we see here is the superior sagittal sinus, then inferior sagittal sinus, this straight sinus, where is this one? This is the straight sinus. Here we see straight sinus, occipital sinus, anterior intercavernous sinus, posterior intercavernous sinuses, they are present here, and basilar venous plexus. So what we have seen in Pars cerebri till now, first it is a large and sickled cell. It is a large and sickle shaped, and it is formed by the reduplication. Remember this term, reduplication of inner layer of dura mater, and it occupies in the median longitudinal fissure between the two cerebral hemisphere. Okay, and important feature, first it has apex. It has an apex which is narrow and is attached to the crista galli. It has base which is broad and is attached to the tentorium cerebelli in the median plane. It has an upper margin which is convex and is attached to the lips of sagittal sulcus on the inner surface of vault of the skull. It has lower margin, is concave and free. It encloses the inferior sagittal sinus in its posterior two-third. Right and left surface of this falx cerebri are related to the medial surface of the corresponding cerebral hemisphere. Now sinuses enclosed in it, first superior sagittal sinus on its convex margin, inferior sagittal sinus in posterior two-third, straight sinus within the junction of falx cerebri with the tentorium cerebelli in the median plane. You can see the apex of this falx cerebri here over the crista galli. This is a superior margin. This is all the superior margin, and this one is the inferior margin. This is the inferior margin. This is the inferior margin, and this is the base. This is the base which is attached, with the tentorium cerebelli here in the median plane. Broad base, tentorium cerebelli. It is a tent shape. It is reduplication of inner layer of the dura mater, and the site is between the cerebellum and cerebrum. It's a tent shape. You have seen in the another slide where you have seen this tent shape tentorium cerebelli is giving a shelter to cerebellum. So that's why the term tent is used. Feature, it has two surface, superior and inferior. Superior surface give attachment to the falx cerebelli in the median plane. Inferior surface is concave to fit the superior surface, convex superior surface of the cerebellum. Two borders, one is attached and another is free. Attached border is attached on the either side to posterior clinoid process, lips of superior petrosal sulcus along the upper border of petrous temporal bone, lips of transverse sulcus of the occipital bone. Whereas the free border, this free border of tentorium cerebelli is U-shaped. Tentorial notch which transmit midbrain. Now it crosses the attached border at the apex of petrous temporal bone to be attached to the anterior clinoid process. Okay. Sinuses enclosed in the tentorium cerebelli are superior petrosal sinus, straight sinus. Here we see this is a tent shaped tentorium cerebelli. It has a two border. This one is an attached border and this U shape is a free border. This attached border here on the posterior aspect we see it attaches with the transverse sulcus, and this one is over the superior petrosal sulcus and attaches here with the posterior clinoid process, where this one is a free U shape. The sinuses of tentorium cerebelli are superior petrosal sinus, straight sinus and transverse sinus. Falx cerebelli, see we have seen the falx cerebelli. So this is the reduplication of inner layer. See, inner layer of dura which project forward into the posterior notch of cerebellum. Here on the posterior notch of cerebellum shape, it is inverted triangle. You can see here, we can see this is an inverted triangle like this, and this is an inverted triangle, and this inverted triangle here we see this is the base and this one is an apex. So the base is directed upward and attaches to the here with the tentorium cerebelli in median plane, with the tentorium cerebelli in the median plane. This is the base, whereas the apex is directed downward. Here we see till the foramen magnum. This is an anterior, this is a posterior margin, and this is the posterior margin encloses the occipital sinus, whereas the anterior margin will be like this way. As we see, anterior margin like this will move like this. This is a tentative imaginary diagram. Here I have drawn with the red color. Anterior margin is free and project in the posterior notch of cerebellum. Now sinuses enclosed in it is the occipital sinus. Here we see the sinus which is enclosed in this is the occipital sinus. Make it with a blue color. Is occipital sinus. Cillae, diaphragm cillae. Cillae is the depression in the sphenoidal bone and this depression in the sphenoidal bone is to lodge the pituitary gland, You can see this diaphragm cilia here. So this is the nasal concave, and this is an anterior aspect, where this is the posterior aspect. So this green color and this is the black color. So green color lining of the dura mater is an outer endosteal layer of the dura mater, which is tightly adherent with the floor of the cranial cavity here. So this is the green one, which is tightly adherent, and this black color is the inner layer. This inner layer which is running, and this outer layer. So this inner layer here at the point get folded and attached at tuberculum cilia here at tuberculum cilia, and it is getting folded. Then when it is getting folded at tuberculum cilia, it lodges intercavernous dural sinus, which is anterior intercavernous dural sinus, and then later on here at the floor of cilia, again you can see it's a fold, it's moving like this, and it's an intercavernous dural sinus here. Then on the posterior aspect here is the dorsum cilia. Here it is getting attached and getting a fold like this and forming a posterior intercavernous dural sinus. So this diaphragm cilia is a small circular fold of inner layer of dura, which covers the pituitary in the hypophyseal fossa. The attachment, just now we have discussed about the attachment, and the sinuses is intercavernous sinuses. Cavum trigeminale. So cavum trigeminale here at the superior petrosal sulcus. This is the superior petrosal sulcus. Over the superior petrosal sulcus, this green color dura, which is an outer endosteal layer, and this black one is a inner meningeal layer. So this inner layer of the dura is getting folded to form a special space which occupying the trigeminal ganglia. Here you can see. Now let's talk about the nerve innervation of the dura mater. You can see this nerve innervation of the dura mater from anterior to posterior, superior to inferior. Now anteriorly, this falx cerebri been innervated anteriorly by anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerve, whereas here we see this falx cerebri been innervated by ophthalmic division of trigeminal nerve, whereas the posterior third of the falx cerebri here it's been innervated by nervus tentori of Arnold, whereas upper here we see it being innervated by upper cervical facial, is upper cervical facial, glossopharyngeal and vagus nerve. So this anterior cranial fossa, then this middle cranial fossa, A anterior, M middle, and P posterior. So anterior cranial fossa, this anterior cranial fossa floor, are talking regarding the floor. So the floor, anterior cranial fossa is supplied mostly by anterior and posterior. You can see anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves, and partly by the maxillary nerve, whereas this middle cranial fossa is supplied by maxillary nerve and its anterior half, and by the branches of mandibular nerve and from trigeminal ganglia in its posterior half, whereas posterior cranial fossa, this posterior cranial fossa is supplied chiefly by recurrent branch from recurrent branch of first, second, and third, first, second, and third cervical spinal nerve, and partly by meningeal branch of 9th and 10th cranial nerve. Whereas here in the vault has only few sensory nerve which are derived mostly from the ophthalmic division, of trigeminal nerve. Arterial supply of dura mater. So here anterior cranial fossa, right, A, then this is for the posterior cranial fossa, and between anterior and posterior this is middle cranial fossa. See, this is external carotid artery, this one is an external carotid artery. Now this external carotid artery, as it is ascending up and giving the branch, this branch is anterior meningeal artery. When it enter in the brain, anterior meningeal artery, which is a branch of ethmoidal artery, which are the branches of maxillary artery. So in anterior cranial fossa, in middle cranial fossa, middle meningeal artery and accessory meningeal artery, which are the branches of external carotid artery. You can see these are the branches of external carotid artery. And in the posterior cranial fossa, posterior meningeal artery, which are a terminal branch of ascending pharyngeal artery and other meningeal branch from ascending pharyngeal artery, occipital artery, and vertebral artery. Clinical anatomy. So in the clinical anatomy, first we talk regarding the head injury. Head injury is often encountered in cases of RTA, road traffic accident. So in the road traffic accident, when it happened, head injuries happen, so there is a collection of the blood which is known as hematoma. So there is a collection of the blood is hematoma. So this collection of the blood, which is hematoma, can be epidural, this is an epidural, or subdural. So if it is epidural, means it is happening in the collection of blood is happening in the epidural space. So this epidural hematoma or extradural hematoma. So the collection of the blood is taking place, and this hematoma, see the RTA, road traffic accident, skull bone is now fractured. You can see the skull bone is fractured. So there is a collection of the blood, and this collection of the blood is arterial blood. This is an arterial blood, and this blood is collected from the injury of middle meningeal artery. Oh, this middle meningeal artery is ruptured or torn, and this middle meningeal artery is present, and mostly this, when this accident happened, in more than 80% cases the injury is over the temporal bone. So here in the temporal bone, in this region is the temporal bone. So as a result, the middle meningeal artery which is moving from this, it get injured. So the collection of the arterial blood take place in this region. Whereas in subdural hematoma, the collection of the venous blood and the collection of the venous blood in subdural space, So this is venous in nature. The blood collected is venous blood. So in case of road traffic accident, the bridging veins, see this bridging vein, they are torn, they injured. So the bridging veins are those veins which are moving out of the subdural space. So these bridging vein injured, and this happened because when some road traffic accident, a force is exerted in such a high manner, in such a big impact. As a result, these bridging veins which are moving out of the subdural space, they get injured due to shock. As a result, the venous blood is collected. Headache is a common condition, a very common condition, developed due to dilatation of intracranial or extracranial artery, or by the stretching or any impact over the dural fold, because dural folds are richly supplied by the nerve and are quite sensitive to the pain. Now we finishes the cranial cavity part 1. Thank you very much.